rape-related pregnancy, and then the choices that we have after that. So, of course, abortion, and then if we have a little bit more time towards the end, we can also talk about what it's like for a child to grow up realizing that they have been conceived through rape. So, the reading material for today is actually an excerpt from. Uh, can you guys hear me? I don't know if I'm audible or not.
Yes,
Yep,
yes, we
all
can hear you.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, very clear.
Sorry, my friend said she couldn't hear me. Okay, so the reading material is an excerpt from a book. I think the link is already available. So, again, today's session, abortion is a very sensitive topic. So, sometimes people may start questioning their own beliefs, whether they are pro abortion or anti abortion or somewhere in the middle. But please be mindful about the fact that we're not here to question anybody's beliefs because we all have our own individual justification as to why we think a certain way. Even when it comes to my stand on this, I tend to not really share because it doesn't really matter. But what today is about is just to understand how somebody who finds themselves in this situation, how they deal with it, and what are the consequences, and what is the impact that it brings to their life psychologically, physically, socially, and emotionally. So it's going to be divided into three parts. First, we're going to look at sexual assault, just have a baseline discussion of what it is. Then we're going to look at Helen's story, which is the article. So we're going to dissect that article together. And then at the end, again, if we have time, we can also talk about a child who grows up realizing that they're a product of rape. So if everybody's ready, then we can start. So we're going to start off with talking about sexual assault. There's a lot of different names to it. We have sexual assault, we have rape, we have sexual abuse, a lot of different ways that you can describe it. But I think the one thing to remember is that when it comes to sexual assault or rape, forced penetration occurs and no consent is given. So here's where I would like to highlight the importance of that word no consent is given. So sometimes people may say, she didn't say no, but the thing is, she didn't say yes either. And sexual assault can happen to both men and women. So he didn't say no, but he didn't say yes either. And sometimes individuals, when they're being sexually assaulted, they can pingsan. Not a lot of people know this, but some individuals can actually faint. So I'm going to throw the question in the air. Would anybody like to take a guess as to why some individuals faint when they're being sexually assaulted? You can unmute or you can also type it out and then I can read it. There's no right or wrong answers here. It's just your guess as to why some individuals faint, and then I'll share my thoughts after that. So, anybody wants to share, unmute, or type? Again, no right or wrong answers.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Izrin. I think when you are assaulted, you get too scared. So our brain kind of like sends a signal to our heart, like, dude, you're in danger. So probably that's why. But I don't know because I've never heard of this thing. So yeah.
Thank you, Ezrin, for sharing. And that is definitely one cause. Yes, your whole body perceives danger, so it decides to shut down in order to protect you so that you do not have to feel the pain. And I think a few people typed as well. Too shocked, the hormones burst so much. Yes, shock is definitely one symptom. They went into a state of shock. Yes, everybody said shock. Very good. So when you are in danger, I think some of you may have heard of this. There's a response called fight or flight. It's a fight or flight like response. But there's also a third response. It's called freeze. So when your body decides to fight, then yeah, you're obviously going to try to fight off the perpetrator. But if your body decides to go with flight, then it's going to flee the situation. So you're going to run. But when your body decides to freeze, you're literally like a statue, like you cannot react. You have no option to react. And what happens is sometimes because you've frozen too much, your body will shut down. So can we control that this state that we're in when we're being sexually assaulted? No, we cannot. We cannot tell ourselves, okay, today you're gonna freeze, or tomorrow you're gonna flee the situation and you're gonna run. It's your body that decides what happens. You're not in control at all in that situation. So can you imagine you had no control over what happened to you during the sexual assault? Then when you come to realization of what happened to you, what do you think are some of the thoughts and feelings that goes through a person's mind when they realize that they've been sexually assaulted and they couldn't do anything about it? Again, you can unmute or you can also type it out. I can start off by saying that shame is definitely one of the feeling that a lot of um, I don't like using the word victim, but victims of sexual assault feel. So, although it's not their fault, but they do feel shameful about what happened. What was the question? The question is, when an individual realizes that they've been sexually assaulted, what do you think are some of the thoughts and feelings that goes through their mind? Initially confused, they never experienced it before. Yep, definitely. Guilt, that's a really good one. Why do you think they feel guilty? It's not like they asked for this to happen to them, right? So why do you think they have that guilt? Scared? For sure. Regret that they are unable to do anything, yeah, definitely. Is there any more? Good.
I felt guilt because like after it took me some time to process that guilt, but then my friend said because like we were culturally, like we were taught, like because it's like we were dressed in a certain way, so that's why we're the victim in the situation. So it was like it was really hard for me to like knock myself out of that belief or thought.
Thank you for sharing, Kaisara. And yeah, I completely agree. It's like society makes us think that it's our fault automatically because we wore a skirt that was too short, or we took a road where the lights were broken, so this happened to us. And all of these feelings that everybody has typed in the chat and has shared verbally, this is what leads to there being a lack of reporting when it comes to sexual assault. Because when you go to a police station, right, they're going to ask you, they're going to question you, they're going to ask you, what did you wear? Was there anybody with you? Why did you go out alone? Those kind of things. So they make you feel as if it's your fault. And then lawyers get involved. And then again, the re-questioning leads to re-traumatization and all of that. Hence, people, there is always a delay in reporting. I believe a study that I read that said that there was a delay in reporting up to a few months. Only after that, victims came forward and started reporting. And when it comes to advocacy, we all advocate for women to report. And we say things like, when you report this, you can have your perpetrator go behind bars, you can attain justice for yourself, or you can help other women, and this can not happen to other women. But we always leave out one important fact. It's that it is completely your choice if you want to report it to the police or not. If you're above 18, it's completely your choice. Nobody can force you. But what's important is going to the hospital. So after you get sexually assaulted, or if you are raped, you have a certain window, 24 hours to 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. But I think it's around 48 hours to go to the hospital and seek for treatment. When you go and seek for treatment, doctors cannot force you to report. So I'm saying go to the hospital not to get yourself reported, but go to the hospital to prevent more trauma from happening to your life. Because when you go to the hospital after you've been raped, they can actually provide you with medication and certain contraceptives to prevent unwanted pregnancies and unwanted STDs from occurring, which is obviously the main topic of discussion today. So imagine you've already gone through so much of trauma in your life with being sexually assaulted, with being raped, with all these people blaming you for what has occurred, with you blaming yourself. So can you imagine if a couple weeks later or a couple months later you start having symptoms and you start missing your period and you realize, shit, I'm pregnant, and then you realize that the father is actually the perpetrator. So I think when it comes to advocacy, just to put it out there for us to also, just a take home message while still in the beginning of today's session, don't pressure women or other people to go and report to the police for the sake of protecting other women. Yes, that is very important, but firstly, protect yourself from getting into a situation where you would have to deal with more trauma in your life with these unwanted pregnancies. I think doctors are more trained to handle these cases rather than police officers. Yeah, they are. They definitely are. Police officers can be a little bit insensitive. Yes, they're doing their jobs and they go through a lot of stress as well. But yes, when it comes to situations like this, doctors are a little bit more sensitive. And again, they cannot force you to report, not unless you're under 18. Then they will report for you. They have to, they have no choice, it's the law. But if you're above 18, just go for the sake of getting yourself treated physically. And also doctors can also recommend counseling and psychological help and all those kind of things, and again preventing unwanted pregnancy. So the questions asked by police officers seem to be blaming the victims. Yep. All right, so Arkila said that reporting procedure is 72 hours for fresh cases. Okay, so 72 hours. And when you go to the hospital, you can get a rape kit done, but what you do with that kit is up to you. So they can store it, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, they can store it for when you are ready to report it later on. So yeah, that's just a little bit about sexual assault and what you can do if you find yourself in that situation. But let's say it has come to a point where a pregnancy did occur. So and the father is the perpetrator. So now we're actually going to look at the story of the article and see what Helen did to help her own self. And we're going to look at the kind of consequences that it brought to her life. So I'm not going to read the whole entire article, but I'm going to highlight certain points. So I hope everybody has a copy of that article. If you don't, then please let us know so that we can send it to you. Okay, I'm gonna start. Hopefully, everybody has it. So, the story is about Helen, and for her sexual assault happened through date rape. So, there's a lot of different types of assault. We have marital rape, we have date rape, we have so many others, but for her, it was date rape. So, she was with her boyfriend at that time, and her boyfriend actually knew that she wanted to save sex for her husband. So her boyfriend was okay with that. But yet, rape occurred, right? And so after a few months of dating, the boyfriend became impatient for sex and decided to force himself on her despite her saying no. And after this happened, as we discussed earlier, she blamed herself for letting it happen. And she felt that it was her fault and she could somehow avoid it. And she did not realize until much later that it was a rape. So this is very common among sexual assault victims. They start questioning whether, they start thinking, maybe I said yes. Maybe my body language gave off an impression that I said yes. Maybe I really didn't say no. So you start justifying that situation, because it's much easier for you to justify that this was consensual rather than come to a realization that you have been raped or sexually assaulted, because that is obviously much more painful for you to deal with. So when Helen found out that she was raped, she did not tell anybody what had happened. So she did not tell her friends, she did not tell her family, and she obviously did not report it. And again, this is so common among people who have gone through trauma. We tend to keep it to ourselves and we don't really let other people know for a lot of different reasons. We're afraid of being judged, we're afraid of people not understanding what we just went through. Yeah, Mahira, sometimes we are afraid because of stigma. That is very, very true. There is a lot of stigma when it comes to so many issues, especially in Yeah, especially in Asian countries, especially in Malaysia, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to sexual assault, when it comes to domestic violence, we're all just under the impression of, it's better that we just suffer in silence and suffer alone because nobody else is gonna understand. So stigma still exists, whether we want to admit it or not, it still exists, unfortunately, which is why conversations like this is so important. So continuing on with Helen's story, 2 months later, she realized that she was pregnant. And she said that a fear gripped me like none I had never known. And she was alone and terrified. Where could she go? Who could she tell? Her parents would kill her. So again, parents did not know. And not knowing where to go for help, she went to the phone book and found the first place that offered pregnancy testing and counseling. And she was looking for someone who could give her direction and guidance. But the only option that the counselor gave her was abortion. So I have so many problems with this statement and what this counselor did, because there are so many different choices other than just having an abortion. She was a freshman in college, which means that she would have been around 18 or 19 years old. So she was not a minor. So there were a lot of different options that she could do on her own without her parents knowing. But the counselor told her that abortion was her only option. Why do you think the counselor told her that? If anybody has any thoughts as to why the counselor would have told her abortion or abortion, like literally the only choice she had was abortion. So does anybody have any rough idea or any guesses as to why the counselor would have told her that? Anything at all? Wild guess.
Straightforward.
Straightforward. So the counselor was being straightforward. Okay. Anything else? Maybe the counselor thinks she's too young. Yep. Yeah. That is definitely a possibility. I was watching a YouTube video of this YouTuber. Her name is Danny Con. I don't know if anybody knows who she is, but she is. There's a lot of controversy around her age. So some people think she's 13, some people think she's 15. I honestly don't know, but she actually fell pregnant. And her counselor, when she went to an abortion clinic, actually, I don't even think it was an abortion clinic, but it was like a pregnancy clinic thingy. And her counselor also told her that abortion was her only option. So I'm not really sure why counselors do this if they think that, it's the age and stuff. But for me personally, I feel like it's always better to lay out your options to that person. This is why. When it came to being sexually assaulted, right, this individual had no choice, no say. She couldn't do anything about that. When it came to being pregnant or using contraceptives or protection, even then she had no choice, she had no say. So now, finally, when she's pregnant, this is the only time where she actually has power. So we're giving her power back, right? We're letting her choose what to do with this. But then here comes the counselor saying that this is your only option. So I think it's, for me personally, I don't agree with what the counselor did. It could be my own bias, but I just feel like it's always better to lay out all the options and let the person decide. And if that person needs help in deciding, then you offer your own advice or you offer your own thoughts and opinions. Um, so people said something. Maybe because people usually think if the baby is from rape, then the victim doesn't want the baby. Yeah, that is an automatic thought. If it's a baby that was conceived through rape, then why would the victim want the baby? Because every time the baby kicks or there's pain or anything movement, then the victim is just going to remember back what happened to her during the rape. But this is not always true because it depends on each individual. Some individuals, for them, babies are a gift, a blessing from God. You're the one carrying the baby, so it's yours, it's a part of you. So it's very it's not fair for us to say, oh, it's a rape related pregnancy, abort, because there are other options. If you want to keep the baby. I personally had an opportunity to work with a refugee this past couple of months. She's from Myanmar. She's living in Malaysia right now. She was raped back in Myanmar, and she fell pregnant from that rape. And she went through with the pregnancy, and right now she's raising the baby, and the baby is already 2 years old. So yes, she's getting treatment and therapy, but she didn't choose to abort because for her, a baby is a blessing from God. You know, it's somebody new that's being added to the family. So I think Farzana asked, I'm interested to know what are the other options, unless I missed it. Sorry, Baru Masuk. So the other options, we never explored that yet, but from the top of my head, abortion, yes, is one of them, but then you can also, again, choose to keep the baby, follow through with the pregnancy and keep the baby and raise the baby as your own. Um, and also, we have going through with the pregnancy and then giving it up for adoption or giving it up to a family member. There's the options that you have when you're pregnant after going through rape and the options that you have when you're pregnant after having consensual sex is pretty much the same. There's not really a difference between those options. Again, it comes down to each individual and what they want. Okay. But if I may, I really think Malaysia's context in the total opposite. Our centers would highly not suggest to abort. Hence, others deciding for the girl. You cannot abort. Yeah, the law in Malaysia. I'm gonna read out the penal code law for Malaysia. Where is it? Oh, it's here. All right. So in Malaysia, under Section 312 of the Penal Code, abortion is not permitted, but it is allowed in certain situations. So abortion is allowed if a medical practitioner registered under the Medical Act 1971 terminates the pregnancy if they are of the opinion, formed in good faith, that the continuance of the pregnancy would involve risk to the life of the pregnant woman or injury to the mental or physical health of the pregnant woman greater than if the pregnancy were terminated. When I was searching up this um, law, this code, a lot of people commented and saying, what is considered formed in good faith? Because it says here, only if it's formed in good faith by the medical practitioner that going through with the pregnancy causes more harm, then abortion is permitted. So that means it's all up to the medical practitioners. And what if there are some medical practitioners who are a little bit more conservative and a little bit more, against the idea of abortion, and they bring in their own personal biases? So then they're gonna not allow a woman to have abortion. So yeah, it is, the law unfortunately is really really something that I think needs to be revised. Like the formed in good faith part is very subjective. That's the word I'm looking for. Subjective. So it depends on the medical practitioner, and you cannot put the life of like your future unborn baby and yourself and your physical and mental health on just one medical practitioner who might be biased. So yeah, I do agree in the context of Malaysia. Of course, I've not experienced this, so I can't say for sure that all the centers or whatever centers that we have in Malaysia are going to say this and get people to keep the baby and say you cannot abort. But I do imagine and I can picture people doing that, definitely. Some of the options: keep the baby if you get support from family. Put the baby in the baby hatch. Yeah, there are baby hatches across in Malaysia. So what happens if you put the baby in the baby hatches? I think they raise the baby, and they also have certain orphanages or certain care homes where caretakers can raise the baby. And get yourself into Generasiku Sayang. That's for Terengganu and Johor. Rumah Bonda, that's in KL. These two centers specializes in taking care of pregnant youth. And last but not least, abortion. Thank you so much, Arkila, for sharing that. So yeah, that's a little bit about the law in Malaysia. And there are laws. I'm not saying that Malaysia is the only place where this law is a little bit rigid. There, even in US, there are certain states where they have laws like this in place. So when it comes to abortion, it honestly is like a worldwide debate and a worldwide argument, when it comes to laws and bills, because people feel that there should be more flexibility in allowing survivors of sexual assault to decide for themselves and not to let the law decide for them. And I also stand by that personally. Abortion should be the last option. Yeah, again, comes down to um, individual belief, because it is a life, you know, and yes, it is a life formed through trauma, but at the end of the day, it is still a life. So we're going to look at how Helen make that decision, and what she says at the end, because what she says at the end, I think is something that a lot of us can agree on. So I'll continue with this story. Where did I stop? Yeah, so the counselor told her that her solution was abortion now or abortion later, and with abortion later, she would have to be hospitalized. But because she's already going to start college and stuff, of course, she doesn't want to be hospitalized, right? So she panicked when she first heard this, understandably enough. And her parents would find out if she waited, yeah, because again, pregnancy, especially within the first 3 months or 4 months, you can grow really, really fast. So it can become really obvious. And so she chose what she thought was her only option. And for her, prior to her pregnancy, she says that she did not agree with abortion, but she never thought that she would have to make that decision. Again, this is something so common with a lot of individuals, not only sexual assault survivors, but our thoughts and opinions on certain things can change depending on what we go through in life, and that is perfectly okay. And she said that she did not want an abortion, but she felt that she had no other choice. This is why I say I felt like what the counselor did was not really fair, because she herself said that she did not want an abortion, but she felt that she had no other choice. When again, there are other choices available. And what happened to her after the abortion? So now she went through the abortion already. This is where she starts facing psychological consequences. She had suicidal thoughts. She said that she wanted to die. And how could she live when she had just ended the life of her child? And the negative feelings resulting from the rape were not eliminated by the abortion. Nothing was solved. Again, when society comes in, they say, "Oh, if you want to what's the word? If you want to get over the rape and whatever happened to you, get an abortion. All your problems will be solved. You don't have to carry the baby anymore. You don't have to carry the reminder of your trauma." But nothing is solved. Now she has to go through another trauma in her life, which is the fact that she keeps telling herself that I just ended a life. So the grief was now doubled, in her own words, and she became severely depressed, suicidal, and the pain was so intense that she would cut herself. So she engaged in self-harm to take away her pain. And then she was actually doing really good in college, but in school. But when she went back to college, she was beginning to fail her classes. She did not process what happened to her. So throughout this story, throughout Helen's journey, she never got the opportunity to actually sit down with somebody and to tell them what happened to her, and to try to process all the emotions and all the thoughts that was going through her mind, from the fact that she was first sexually assaulted, and then she got pregnant, and then she had an abortion. Nobody knew. Up to this point, her friends didn't know, her family didn't know. The only person who knew was that counselor in that pregnancy clinic. So understandably enough, she cannot go on with life like as if nothing ever happened, because all of these thoughts are going to cloud her mind. And depression is not easy to pull yourself out of. You need support. You definitely need that support. And she finally a concerned friend who saw the changes taking place and recognized her need for help confronted her. So finally somebody actually found out what was going on. And this person had actually also been raped. So it was somebody that she could relate to, because both of them went through the same kind of pain. And then the friend took her to a counselor, and then began the long process of healing. So before I continue, again, I'm just going to throw the question in the air. What do you think are some of the ways in which we can help an individual who has gone through this situation? So let's say we are a concerned friend and we see our friend and we realize that this has happened to them. How do you think we can help, or how do you think we can be there for them? Anybody at all? Listen and trust whatever choices they make. Yep, listening is definitely number one. Again, we don't know the situation that they've been through. We don't know. We've not been in their position. Although sometimes we may go through similar situation, we still have not walked a day in their shoes. So it's very important to listen to them and to ask them how we can help them, because sometimes they might have their own ideas of the kind of help that they need from us, which is why listening and asking is so important before we jump straight into problem solving mode and try to solve all of their problems for them. A few others came in. Listen, empathize, take them to seek professional help. Yep. When a person has been through this much trauma, honestly, besides social support, professional help is definitely the way to go, because professionals, they have a way of helping clients or helping individuals process their trauma, ways in which we do not know how to do as friends besides just listening, which is why professional help is definitely very important. Be a listening ear for them and support their choices. Yeah, mental support, be there with them, be there for them and check up on them every day, to at least be there when they need to go to hospitals or to meet authorities. Yeah, this is very, very important. Stuff like this, going to the hospital or going to make a report, if they choose to make a report, it's less intimidating if we have a friend to follow us or if we have a friend to support us. Different organizations, they have their own social workers. So like WAO and AWAM and stuff. If you this happens and if you decide to report it to WAO and AWAM, they have their own social workers who can follow you to make a report or to go to hospitals and things like that if you don't want to be alone. So even that is also a way for you to get support when you have to make this kind of decisions or reports. But even as you go with a social worker, you can always still bring a friend. So having a friend, somebody you trust, because social workers, it's different, you have to build that rapport and trust with them. You don't know who they are, they're strangers, right? So some people may be hesitant, but if you have a friend with you, that's going to be way less intimidating and less scary. There's a question. What do you think about men that get sexually assaulted? My opinion personally stays the same of men and women who get sexually assaulted. Yes, Amira, I'm going to pause for a while. Lukman, I'll answer in a bit, but Amira, you can unmute if you want to say anything.
Hi Kiran. I'm
Hello.
Amira. So my answer, we should educate ourselves before we approach them and be an ongoing support, be an ongoing source of support. And I do have a question. Um, is there an ongoing threat from perpetrator? That's all from me. Thank you.
Ongoing, sorry, what?
Is there an ongoing threat from perpetrator?
Trait as in like personality trait, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, ongoing trait from perpetrator. Um, perpetrators, they are very unpredictable. They're not people that we can't just say, okay, perpetrators have, they act a certain way or they have this personality and stuff. There are certain signs. So sometimes perpetrators, especially domestic violence perpetrators, they can have antisocial personality traits. So when it comes to antisocial personality traits, it's more of people doing things without much empathy. So for example, back when they were in school, when they were in school, they may light a lighter. This is a very extreme example, but they may light a lighter and they may bring it closer to their friends, or they may play with fire, that kind of things, so very, very traits that you think people are just being naughty, but that can actually be antisocial personality traits, which is one of the biggest personality disorder in sexual assaulters. But other than that, sexual assault predators are very unpredictable because they can be the person that you thought was supposed to protect you. So this can happen within families as well, right? So sexual assault predators could be your uncle,